The Nephilim, the Jotun, Jabbirun, they go by many names, but today we know them simply as giants. Throughout human history, we have told stories about exceptionally strong, monstrously tall humans. But did they ever actually exist? Rumors of giant skeletons have been swirling around the archaeological world before the very inception of this scientific discipline. You've probably seen images of impossibly large skulls and leg bones half buried in the dirt. You might have wondered whether these images were real or whether they were part of an internet hoax. The truth may be slightly more complicated than that, and it might surprise you. So did giants ever really walk the earth? Let's find out.
And 51 million people entering another
surveillance camera capturing the
unidentified flying object.
lockdowns and mass testing.
Today, that the world is going to end.
First off, you could argue that giants exist even to this day, caused by an overproduction of growth hormone. Gigantism is a legitimate condition that can cause people to grow to more than 9 feet tall. Gigantism is also linked with acromegaly, which is essentially the adult form of gigantism. Notable people who have lived with acromegaly include Andre the Giant, Big Show, Paul Benedict, and Ted Cassidy. But does this condition really explain ancient legends of giants? After all, the Nephilim were said to be hundreds of feet tall. Was the height of these ancient giants simply exaggerated to make the stories more interesting? Perhaps the most recent example of giant skeletons came in 2017, when the remains of abnormally large humans were discovered in China. The skeletons were found in the Shandong province, and archaeologists uncovered a total of 205 graves. This graveyard contained skeletons that were abnormally large for that time period, with one individual reaching a height of 6'2". Now, that isn't exactly a giant, but when these people walked the earth 5,000 years ago, they would have towered over other people in China. Evidence also suggests that these people were abnormally strong. Earlier in 2006, the Longshan giant was discovered in the Shaanxi province. This skeleton was said to be about 16 years old, but the individual had already reached a height of well over 6 feet. This suggests that if he had survived past his teen years, he might have been much taller. Again, this skeleton comes from a period of about 4,000 to 5,000 years ago. It's worth noting that the legendary Chinese philosopher Confucius was also said to be incredibly tall. Some ancient texts even describe him as being 9'6", but more reliable estimates put him at approximately 6'2". Faced with this evidence, many wonder why ancient Chinese people during Neolithic times were so much taller than they are today. Some say that these ancient giants were a completely different race of people, while others claim that they simply had better diets. Perhaps the most stunning giant skeletons have been found in North America. For example, a skeleton roughly 8 feet tall was found during the 1980s at Serpent Mound in Ohio. There are even accounts of this skeleton having double rows of teeth. In 1959, a skeleton with a height of about 7'2" was found near Big Sandy River in West Virginia. Not only was this skeleton tall, but it also showed evidence of being immensely strong, with a heavy and angular jawbone. In 1933, an 8-foot skeleton was discovered at Hope Springs Park in Missouri. After it was discovered by a young boy, the skeleton was examined by the local people and sent to the Smithsonian. Strangely, it was never seen again. In 1899, a skeleton with a height of about 8'2" was found in Ohio. Once again, a massive jawbone was discovered, suggesting incredible strength. Gigantic skeletons were also found recently in the Rutherford Kaiser site of Mississippi. From 1911 to 1939, several giant skeletons were excavated from Lovelock Cave in Nevada. One of these giants measured 8'6", and even the smallest skeletons were well over 6'6". Interestingly, the legends of the local Paiute tribe speak of cannibalistic red-haired giants that were cornered in a cave and burned to death with flaming arrows. But the largest skeleton ever discovered was found on Catalina Island, just off the coast of Los Angeles. During the 1920s, a man named Ralph Glidden excavated a number of different grave sites in the region, finding numerous skeletons that were taller than 7 feet. The largest of these was said to measure 9'2". Later, a German naturalist visited the island and discovered an 8-foot-tall skeleton. Much like their Chinese equivalents, we have to ask ourselves whether these giants were even related to the earliest known inhabitants of North America, the First Nations people. Indeed, numerous native tribes have legends that speak of giants living alongside their earliest ancestors, and these stories make it clear that they were a completely different race. Some legends even speak of giants with advanced technology that allowed them to dominate lesser tribes and build strongholds across the United States. Some tribes say that this race of giants was wiped out by some type of cataclysm, while others say they simply returned to the heavens. Many other giant skeletons have been found throughout the world, from China and ancient Rome to France and the Middle East. While we tried to stick to the skeletons that have been confirmed by mainstream science, many others mysteriously went missing or were dismissed as hoaxes. Make no mistake, there could be many more gigantic skeletons that mainstream science is either covering up or dismissing for no real reason. We know that gigantism is real, so these ancient giants must have been normal humans that were suffering from a genetic condition, right? Well, you have to remember that gigantism is an incredibly rare disease, and there have only been 100 cases of this condition recorded in the entirety of the United States history. So why do giant skeletons seem so common, especially in the burial mounds found throughout the United States? The Smithsonian has records of 17 skeletons measuring more than 7 feet tall. Because gigantism is so rare, they would have had to excavate millions of burial sites to find so many skeletons that big. The only alternative explanation is that there really was a different race of beings that roamed the earth at some point. If this race of humans existed, they grew to towering heights naturally, not because of an overproduction of growth hormone. Maybe the old legends are true after all. Maybe, at some point, there really was a race of giants roaming the earth. These Nephilim might have been wiped out by some kind of massive cataclysm, such as a volcanic eruption, a solar outburst, or even a meteor. One thing is for sure, that lineage is completely lost to us now, and modern people cannot reach such heights without suffering serious health problems. But if there really was a race of giants roaming the United States before the First Nations people even arrived, then why don't we know more about them? Why does it seem like evidence of this ancient society is being covered up? That is a question that may never be answered.